Hi, welcome to room one. Sorry for a minor delay. I'm now going to pass you straight over to Mr. Ben Rouse.
Cheers very much, Ollie. Right, thank you to everyone who is joining or will join or watches this at whatever point is convenient to them. So, something I've been interested in for a while is how you kind of measure the impact of technology on learning. So, I'm also particularly motivated by there's a large amount of articles and sort of headlines out there that suggest that technology in the classroom is a distraction, is a problematic thing. It's quite good having Eleni in the call as well, because the OECD report that came out not too long ago talked about Australia's sort of large amount of computers and whether that was a good thing or not. So my history is I became a Google certified teacher in December 2013 after taking my school down the Google Apps for Education route after sort of various forms of virtual learning environment. So I've been leading that change, and I've been getting feedback from the students and teachers on whether it's been a positive change, and generally it's regarded as a positive one. But for school leaders that I talk to, they obviously want to know about the impact. If they're going to get devices into their classroom, if they're going to adopt Google Apps for Education, if they're going to look at the way that technology links in with learning and teaching, then they want to know potentially what the impacts will be. And I don't think it's as simple as saying you put iPads in your school and you're going to get better results. So my feeling is that we might need to have a common language of how we measure impact for technology for learning. You are welcome to obviously use the link below and get access to these slides. And obviously, as I update them and go along, then we'll get a chance to sort of share on that. And I'll be really interested about the way in which, if you are trying to measure the impact, how you go about doing that. Okay. So, well, I've been doing a few different tasks here with the schools that I work across. So I work across 16 schools, most of them primary, one secondary, helping them develop their technology for learning. And my main port of call is, can we get them using the technology they've already got to its full potential? One example of that is a primary school who had a load of Android tablets, and they are the picture that you can see. They bought them in, but they weren't necessarily sure about how they're going to use them. So been working with them on trying to train the teachers on getting used to those tablets. We've enrolled them into the Google Apps for Education account so we can control them better. And what we've been doing is a little project about, well, if you've got a tablet, what on earth is the point? So what's the difference that it can have to the classroom? You can do a search, and you can do independent learning, or searching skills is something that often gets done on tablets, but realistically it doesn't necessarily need a tablet to be able to do that. So what do the tablets offer that you wouldn't normally get? And in this case, it was a camera. So these tablets have a camera which enabled the teachers and the students to get outside and take pictures and document their learning in a different way. And by using Google Drive in the background to put the photos on, the teachers get instant access to the children documenting their learning. So that was the way that we had the tablets in school. Initially, they weren't having any impact whatsoever. And what we did was we worked with the school around their school development plan, around their vision for teaching and learning, to try and find a way that these tablets could have an impact. One of our schools had a little visit from Google Expeditions, and we're able to play around with Google Cardboard. So why I love this photo is there's a moment of learning and exploration that we always strive for in our classrooms. And there's something that technology brought to that girl's experience that day. So there, I think, is a visual impact. She's going to remember that experience. So is it that we measure the impact of technology just on the engagement? Is that enough? We've put some Chrome bases into our sixth form study area. So that's where the A-level students, the 16 to 18-year-olds, go to do their independent study. And what's quite interesting is there are PCs and Chromebooks. The Chromebooks are along the side, as you can see, and the PCs, the Windows PCs, are in the middle. And I had a bit of feedback about that Chromebases weren't being used as much as the PCs. So we're kind of trying to figure out, well, why is that? Was it a bad choice to put the Chromebases there? Were they having a negative impact? Were the students avoiding them? Interestingly, I observed the students entering the room, and the PCs are arranged in a more sociable situation, so the students could be facing each other. So in terms of that technology, it wasn't necessarily that the technology wasn't appropriate, it was just more about the fact that the students wanted to be able to see each other. So there was an interesting little concept for me to get my head around with that. iPads is a common occurrence in some of the schools. A number of schools have got iPads knocking about, and they use them in a variety of different ways. In terms of the impact, I see it as very varied. Some have better impact than others. And what I've come to realise, I think, is that the tool is neither here nor there when it comes to the impact. It's how the teachers go about using them, how the teachers are trained to use them, and once again, back to the planning and the pedagogy. So for measuring the impact of those iPads, do we just look at results? So you can see in this picture here, they were being used for mathletics and a little bit of times table practice. Did you need an iPad in order to learn your times tables? I didn't have an iPad and I learned mine. So I think we need to be, again, more nuanced in how we measure the impact of technology on learning. Google recently sent out a tweet where they asked people to list the most positive impact of technology for your students, and as you can see from the results, personalised learning came out as a distinct frontrunner, followed by student engagement and collaboration. So are these examples of the types of measures that we want to use to assess impact on learning of technology? So how do you go about measuring whether the learning is personalised? Is that asking the students whether they feel it was personalised for them? Is personalised learning a goal that schools set out to achieve? So again, I have no definitive answer for it, but what I've been moving towards is what are the particular aspects that we could assess, measure, and discuss as the impact. So not too long ago, the OECD brought out a report called Students, Computers and Learning, and it gathered a few headlines immediately because people took the report, found a few quotes and started sensationalizing the results, and they came up with, well, the BBC came up with, computers do not improve pupil results, say OECD. Obviously, because I've got a bit too much time on my hands, I've actually read it, which was an exciting sort of few hours of my life. But if you read into a bit more detail, there's some of the summaries are a bit more generous than just saying that computers don't improve learning. So indeed, if you scan towards the end of the report, it points out that great teaching can be amplified by technology, but it obviously doesn't replace poor teaching. So more and more, and what this report really points at is technology in the classroom is down to the teachers, it's down to the training of the teachers. And as I get an opportunity to do that with schools, you can see that schools will dedicate training time to learning and teaching. They'll dedicate it to different aspects of planning and delivering lessons. They'll also dedicate it to some of the stuff that we sit through mundanely for an hour. But whether the training for the technology, sometimes it's down to how do I use this tool, and maybe not as much as it should be, it's down to how can I enhance learning with a number of tools around us. In response to a report, I'll come out of the screen share. Let me get the right one. Here we go. So the TES took the OECD report and made a conclusion that frequent use of computers impairs learning. And there was also a quote from Ofsted around the same sort of time, Ofsted, who inspects UK schools, saying that tablets in schools distract students So, and where we got it. So these kind of negative aspects of computers in schools get picked up very easily. And the bit that is bothering me is that it overlooks the teacher's role in this. So the tool is put in the school and the learning gets worse. And I think if that discussion gets too much attention, then it overlooks the kind of real aspect of how we're trying to look at technology in the classroom. Let me just skip back. So there was an interesting blog post that responded to the OECD report, responded to the Ofsted comment about tablets being a distraction in the classroom, and scoured Ofsted reports for references to technology or use of tablets or computers in the classroom, and found a large number of relatively positive comments related to schools' use of technology. So this one, for example, noted the positive impact on students' learning, and also noted that it was obvious. So for this inspector, the positive impact was obvious. So what was it? How did that school decide that tablets was a way to have that positive impact? Was it that the school had a particular desire to work for the students to work independently, and therefore that led them to identify tablets as a way to facilitate that independent working? Was it that they identified communication between students and teachers as not being good enough, and that tablets would address that particular issue? So it led me to think that maybe the way we measure the impact of technology for learning is to focus, as we always do in schools, on the school development plans, on the focus that schools have and the top priorities, and where technology can support and enhance them, then that's where we look to see the impact. In another sort of primary school, which was judged as good, it talked about tablets again and talked about using them for photographic evidence. So once again, the technology was used in a way that you wouldn't necessarily have the facility to do without it, and also reference to the computing curriculum as well. So that's my little beginning of a journey into how we measure the impact. I've just published the first of 3 blog posts about this as well. So I've started off with a bit more detail about the kind of things I've talked about today, about these kind of negative aspects of how computers apparently affect our children in the classroom. And what I start a discussion about is, what would your measures of impact be? If you do have any suggestions about the ways in which your schools are measuring the impact of technology, how you know it's working or how you know it's not, then obviously feel free to put it on the little dialogue on the right-hand side in room 1, and also feel free to add it to the blog. The point I'm at the moment is that the OECD report talks about equality, digital literacy, and teacher-student collaboration as some of the ways in which technology can impact positively in the classroom. So for example, do we know that our technology policies are working in schools if there's evidence that access is equal to all students, regardless of their background? And that's something that we can probably more tangibly measure. We can probably measure the digital literacy of our students, and indeed our teachers. So again, implementing this technology is one thing, but if it's going to be used effectively, if it's going to be working, then surely we need to work on the digital literacy of everyone within the organisation. And then teacher and student collaboration, that I think is a bit more measurable. You can see the number of collaborations. So from a Google Apps for Education point of view, that we use across our schools, teachers are responding very positively as I introduce them to the opportunity to work collaboratively on report writing, to work collaboratively with their students, to have group projects around one Google slide rather than memory sticks and things, and PowerPoints and emails that they send that they can't find or that are too big to share. So for that reason, maybe technology also, one of the ways it should be impacting positively on the school is time. and maybe even resources such as a bit less paper. So that's kind of where I'm at. I'm not saying that I have any answers to it, which is probably disappointing for anyone that signed in. But I would definitely like to come to a conclusion on a way of joining up. So Lenny and I do similar things in terms of supporting schools, and Ollie does and Dean does, but I don't think we have a common language in talking about how our technology that we're using is impacting in the classroom. So for that reason, I would really like to get to a point where we can have some similarities in the way in which we talk about the impact of. So Ollie's bring your own device program, Dean's use of Chromebooks in the classroom. The tools shouldn't matter as much as the impact on teaching and learning. And I'm on a little bit of a mission to measure that impact and be able to report it to other school leaders about why, not an iPad rollout, but how using technology well, training teachers to use technology well, is going to have a positive impact on their schools without sounding like a complete liar and saying this tool will make your results better. I've rambled on for a while. I hope that's not too ridiculously mundane. Welcome back, Ollie.
Ben, I was just going to say I couldn't agree more with you. I think it does come down to, in the end, how the teachers use it and how it's integrated. It shouldn't be there to replace, worksheets, etc. It should be there to transform the learning experience. And I know at my current school we're going through the same model, and every term, at the beginning of each term, we have professional development where we share different ways with our staff of what we're doing. So it's just that rethinking of what you're doing with your tasks and not doing the same thing but trying to engage your students more. So yeah.
At the end of the teacher, when teachers share in the teacher training sessions that you have, could one of the measures be about the confidence they feel going forward to the next lesson with their technology, or could it just be whether they have a smile on their face? Because I've seen teachers bounce out of sessions like that with a new idea, and there's an impact.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it also comes from a whole school movement. You can't just have one or two people doing it. It's got to be a whole school approach, and everyone's got to be on board. And more talk, I think. A lot of teachers are doing wonderful things, but we've just started a new school year here in Australia, and it's always good to go and speak to the teachers before and say, okay, so what tools did you use that they really enjoyed and found that you found they were engaged with? So then the next teacher can also continue that and use some of those but introduce others, I think is also important.
We're definitely on the same page. So I'm going to continue writing the blog posts. Hopefully I'll get some interesting insights from that, but I'm going to keep on going for it, because I think what you said about schools need to, from the very top, be behind the initiatives. And I think the bit I find difficult is school leaders are looking, in some cases, for tell me what I'm going to see as a difference. And that's not as easy as saying better results.
Yeah. And Ben, there's just a couple of people who have written in the room, and they've just said that they love a bit of action research, and evidence of impact is so important. And coming from an educator, someone in a school always counts for so much more than an independent report. And I think that last one really touches with me and something I'm really interested in. I love it when you actually get the experiences of teachers who are using it, who are having those troubles, who are trying to attempt using technology and come across those hiccups. That's what other teachers want to know. You could tell someone it's going to work perfect, but in the real world we always have technology difficulties. So that is a really good point, whoever made that comment, that it makes a difference when it's coming from someone in your school.
Because I sat down with a languages teacher, and she was switching from paper marking of quality controlled assessment to doing it on a Google document. And I set out the ideas. This is how you should do it. So you should use comments and all these things. She ignored it entirely and did it her own way, and it was really, really effective. So I think there's a good example of the dialogue was good, the technology worked for her, but that was a teacher understanding how she worked, understanding how our class worked, and she did it in a way that worked well for her. So as much as I think I know what I'm talking about, obviously I don't.
And I think that's another thing, you know, we have to accept that we don't have all the answers, that, you know, the way we work may not be the way someone else works, and you have to be adaptive of that as well. So, yeah.
Here. I believe I need to let you get started on your slot now, don't I?
I think so. So I'll just share my screen with everyone. I'll share this one first. Okay, so what I'm going to be sharing with everyone today is bringing the outside world into your classroom. So I'm going to be looking at Google My Maps, and the link for my slides is just there. So it's bit.ly/unconference my maps, so all one word, all lowercase. So more than welcome to flick through the slides. I will be jumping back and forth. But just so you know, as I said earlier, I did in the lobby give a little bit of an introduction of who I am. So I'm Eleni Karitsis, and I'm from a school in Melbourne, Australia. I'm a Google certified innovator and a Google certified trainer, and I recently just became a Hapara certified educator. I'm the host and founder of Teach Tech Play, creator of Genius Alpha. You can find me online if you have any questions or any queries. I have got a blog post coming out about this in the next few weeks, hopefully, so keep an eye out for that with some more ideas. But this is going to be just a quick little short introduction on how I use Google My Maps. So Google mapping tools have really transformed the way we get places in the world. If I ask anyone viewing how many times you've used Google Maps to figure out where you're going, I know that the majority of you will say, yes, that is me, because I'm terrible with directions and I need to know. So I just put it in my phone and it tells me the right way. But it's a lot more than that. It's a tool that you can use in your classroom to get students to be aware of the world around them. So as I said, Google then took all these photos from around the world, and now they are accessible in your classroom. And I love it, Ben, how you had the Google Cardboard in your slides, because that's the next step of everything. It's just been released, and I was lucky enough as well to have it at my school. And I'll never forget one of the students when I think it was one of the grade ones. I took them underwater, and there was a seal and a turtle, or a sea animal there, and her response was, I never thought it would be possible that I can breathe underwater. And, you know, it's comments like that where you really get to take your students out into this world to experience things they never thought could be possible. But being an upper primary teacher, I use Google My Maps quite a lot. And the ways I use it are to rethink what we're doing. So anything to do with mapping, anytime we talk about a location, if someone goes somewhere, if it comes up in a reading, if it just comes up in conversation, what I always do is I pull up Google My Maps and we find where it is in the world. It was really interesting. At the end of last year, we got our students to draw a map of the world. And I thought they would know a bit of the world and where places are, especially considering a lot of the students had traveled worldwide. They had been to Europe, America. They'd been to many of these places that many people would dream of going to. And it was really interesting. They'd heard of places but had no real idea of where they're placed on the world. So it just shows that no matter how much you talk about places and kids actually go there, if you don't actually put it to a perspective, they don't actually have that understanding. So I use Google My Maps for holiday recounts, information reports, any sort of information